listening to the VetTunes podcast, where we shine the spotlight on veteran artists and artists in the music industry. Stand by for transmission. All right, transmission indeed. We're transmitting to you from Harmony Hill Studio in Shelbyville, Tennessee. And today we have the distinct pleasure of having Mr. Ryan Weaver here on the VetTunes podcast. Ryan is an Army veteran and a country music rocker who's out there touring all over the country, playing some amazing music, and welcome to the VetTunes podcast.
Brother, I truly appreciate the opportunity to sit down with another brother in arms and have conversations that are a little bit unique in Music City.
Absolutely. It's always fun for us to come across military and veteran artists and, hopefully help showcase their talents, and I ran across you and your band at the Music City Marine Corps Ball back in, I think it was November 1st of 2025. And then luckily we were able to align the schedules and have you come down and see us. But, Music City is, there's always things happening, and it was a great pleasure to meet you at the ball, or at least to hear you, and then to come to find out that you are an Army veteran up there just rocking out and doing your thing. You have an amazing story, and we want to let people know about it.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed watching your performance as well, and it's interesting because you were in uniform when you performed, and I was like, you said you performed that night, and I was like, well, which one were you? And it's like, I was one of you. I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. It was great. It's awesome, and I appreciate the compliments. I really do. Coming from another veteran as well, it means even more.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to dig into, but what we really like to do here is talk about your path to the military, and then your path to music. And then a lot of times they coincide, but let's talk about your journey to the Army.
Yeah, I've got a family history of the military service. One of my singles that we just watched, Let's Talk About Heroes, talks about my grandfather who was a belly gunner in World War II. We followed in his footsteps. My dad was a Marine, and my oldest.
There was something I liked about
Yeah, greatest man I've ever known. But my brother Steve was a Ranger and transitioned out of the military, went back in, become a warrant officer. Initially was a Cobra pilot. Then he went to the OH-58s and then the OH-58 Delta Kiowas. And my brother Aaron was in the Ranger Regiment, 3rd to 75th. He was in the ambush in Mogadishu in Somalia, where the Black Hawk Down was made after for those folks out there. And he got out of the military and then went back in as a warrant officer as well, and he flew Kiowas. And then I was at a recruiting station on a Sunday night as a recruiter, doing the paperwork to put somebody in the Army the next day, and Aaron called me at my recruiting station desk and said, hey, they changed the vision standards for flight school. You got to think about putting your packet in, because I had a problem with my packet initially when I was in E4, pupil dilation, something wrong, and then I didn't think I had 20/20 anymore. And went and did my flight physical and got it done, and that was 3 months later. I was selected and gone to flight school. So I transitioned from being a military intelligence analyst and stuck on recruiting duty to becoming a Black Hawk pilot. And so it was a pretty awesome experience to see two completely different sides of the Army in that regard, and going from the enlisted side up to E6 promotable, and then becoming a warrant officer. I was in Iraq in 2003, 2004. My brother was with the 82nd. At the time, he was actually a cancer survivor, was non-deployable. Got a waiver to be deployed. I was with the 1st Armored Division. He was with the 82nd, just southwest of Fallujah, where you were, in 2006. Yeah. And we had a bunch of aircraft that were getting shot down all around that time. And Kimberly Hampton on January 2nd in 2004 got shot down. And I don't know if you remember that National Guard Chinook that went down. They were all going on R&R, actually, heading to the airport and got shot down. So all of that was happening in that area down south of Fallujah. And my brother was, he had to get bi-monthly blood screenings because of that waiver, and was a passenger in a medevac helicopter on the way to the hospital, and it was shot down by an insurgent. He was killed in action, and I actually flew that day. It was interesting because we got back to our company command post, and saw on Fox News that a Black Hawk had been shot down west of Baghdad, and I'm watching the video images of it and didn't realize that that was my brother. Had no idea, and was reversing out because he was actually going to come and visit me the next couple of days and stay the night after his blood screening was done. But he got on a flight a day early and was on Yahoo Instant Messenger with my mom that night. We were in aviation, so yes, all of y'all ground pounders out there that didn't have internet cafes, of course, there's some choices you make in life, and mine was aviation and a better standard of living, I guess. But
probably a good move.
Yeah. Well, but anyway, I was on the internet with her, Yahoo Instant Messenger, and we logged off, and they showed up at her door 15 minutes after that, and said, "Ma'am, Department of Defense regrets to inform you that your son's been killed in action." She said, "No, I was just on with him. He's fine." And she said, "Your son, Aaron Weaver, was a passenger in the back of that Black Hawk." And I was woken up that next morning at 8:33, and I told that he, by my company commander, that he had been killed in action. And I came home from the next day. I flew. Well, it took me a few days to get home through Spain and all that, but ended up coming home to his funeral. And after that, I flew that day. That was the last day I ever flew a Black Hawk. And it took me about 2 years to even look at one. I dealt with his death differently than a lot of other folks deal with it. And it was really, really tough on me. Steve is my older brother. Aaron was we're much, much closer in age, year and 9 months. And I followed in his footsteps my entire career and took different paths, but he was always my standard of performance. And Steve was Aaron's standard of performance. But yeah, so that turned into this whole country. It was the spark, the catalyst for my country music career that's lasted all the way up until now. So it's been a pretty big journey, from boots in the sand in Iraq to great stories like I told you about with Boots on the Center Circle of the Grand Ole Opry with Charlie Daniels. But in 2013, let me digress, my brother-in-law Randy Billings was piloting a Black Hawk in Afghanistan, and Al-Qaeda had set up a IED on a mountainside. They were doing a reconnaissance of a cell phone tower. The IED blew the tail boom off that aircraft, and a passenger was ejected at the top of the hill. And then they rolled down 500 feet of mountainside, and he was killed in action. So we became a two-time Gold Star family. I wear their dog tags, their honor tags with mine and my brother Steve's. They're all back-to-back because we got each other's backs. But anyway, so that just added more fuel to the fire, and that was in 2013. So things had already started kicking off up here in Nashville when I moved here in 2012. So and that's kind of how my military career went.
So you retired what year?
I retired in 2012,
Okay.
February 2012.
And where were you at the time?
I was at Fort Rucker. So I went to Fort Rucker after I was spent about 5 months as rear detachment in Germany, and then was restationed to be a TAC officer at Warrant Officer Candidate School. And for several months at Warrant Officer Candidate School, I did that. That's when I actually did my first singing competition. That got me a little bit of notoriety, I guess. I wouldn't say notoriety, but in the local area, because I was doing singing competitions. We did a little bit of that during flight school. I was going broke and found out it was something I could do. So I don't have that typical country music story. I started really late in the game, realized it was something that the crowds thought I was good at. I didn't really know that I was good at it, but more the performance aspect of it than the actual vocal side of it, because I had no vocal training or anything. Yeah. But that Kenny Chesney's Big Star song, it's kind of that's kind of my story. Yeah. But
well, I think with veteran artists, that typical or traditional country music story, it just doesn't exist.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's just such a different path.
Really is.
But so you're doing competitions.
Did a military idol competition. I don't know if you remember when they had that.
What was it called? It
was called the Military Idol competition. So all the armed services essentially did a American Idol type of competition, yeah. And I got runner-up. I didn't win. The guy who won went to nationals, and that weekend he went to nationals. They had Fort Rucker's 50th anniversary celebration, and Darryl Worley and Tracy Lawrence came in. And this is actually kind of a cool turnaround story. Like it's serendipitous, I would say, and we'll talk about that here in a sec. But and I got to perform just attracts, kind of karaoke style.
Right.
But the Army band was playing there, and they had a rock band off post. So it was all non-commissioned officers that were rocking off post, making extra money.
Sure.
And they needed a country music artist. They saw me there. But Darryl Worley and Tracy Lawrence played on the big stage, and I got to play on a small stage. But that was kind of my first big opening for any, artist. And that was on a Saturday. And my very first bar show was with the Army band. We did one rehearsal of all the songs, essentially because they needed country music artists, country music added to their mix down there in Alabama.
Right.
So my first bar show was down there at Fort Rucker. Started touring the bar scene and made a goal for myself every 6 months to increase the size of the club that I was going to be playing at. And by 7 months, I'd already started opening up for Montgomery, folks like Montgomery Gentry, Trace Adkins, Jason Michael Carroll at amphitheaters and touring around the Southeast. Yeah,
it's a big jump.
It was huge. I mean, and then at that point, all the big clubs were really what I was focusing on. I ended up, there's a guy named Shane Owens that was playing around in the Southeast, and he had a band that was with him. And when he got his record deal, the band didn't come with him, which often happens in Nashville. And so they needed another lead singer, so I toured around with them, and they already had a bunch of big clubs booked, so that's really what I started doing with them. And then once the sun settled on that situation, I brought the Army guys back in and asked them what they could potentially do, because they couldn't do a lot of traveling. They were still on active duty, and I was too, but I had a great commander that gave me an opportunity to chase this dream while I was still on active duty on the weekends when I wasn't deploying or anything like that. So anyway, but yeah, I moved up to the festival scene and really kind of started planting my seeds and my roots here in Nashville in 2006 and really meeting great people like Jeffrey Steele that we got to talk about and working a little bit with him. And that opened a whole lot of doors in Nashville, and some things just started, as they call this, the 10-year town. And now it's 2026, and I've been coming to this town since 2006, and it's almost like when did Burn come out? Anyway, I don't want to get off track on the storyline, but yeah, so it was about, I think it was about 5 years, 6 years before something really, started escalating there too. So
yeah, well, one of the biggest things about Nashville is it's the songwriting capital.
Oh yeah,
the songwriting is just it's sacred here. It's very special, and I've been fortunate to work with different songwriting with veteran organizations, and get to sit down with guys like Don Goodman and Steve Dean and Dave Gibson and Bill White and Hunter Girl and just a host of folks. What was that experience like with you when you first sat down with Jeffrey Steele? I mean, Jeffrey Steele, one of the biggest hit songwriters there is. He's written multiple #1 smashes for Rascal Flatts and just a ton of hits and amazing stories in the way he crafts a song. But what was that experience like?
It was. I would say the first intimidating experience that I had, because I knew about his history and I knew because I did a lot of research on him before I went and sat down. But essentially, a couple of friends that I'd been that were doing the thing in Nashville and the independent artist thing, whatnot. They reached out to him. They met him from an event or something like that, and they reached out to him and said, "Hey, I got a veteran artist. He's, a Gold Star family member." At the time, I was only a first-time Gold Star family member, and there was a song he wrote called 19, and Shane Owens actually had cut that song. That's what got him his record deal. But I wanted to cut it myself as well, because the song really talked about essentially the story of my brother, and I hadn't really started writing with good writers or whatnot, and I was writing a lot of my own. Didn't know a whole lot about what I was doing, and so I went to his recording studio on Berry Hill and walked in, and of course you look on the wall and he's got platinum Rascal Flatts records, he's got platinum Montgomery Gentry records, he's got, just a wallpaper of smash hits, and This the first time I'd actually gone into a recording studio ever, and it was a unique recording studio because it was essentially a house converted into a recording studio.
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
this isn't what the perception of recording studios and all that kind of stuff. It was different than I expected. I was expecting something more like what we're in right now, a big room, that kind of stuff, and he had it all, the house essentially converted anyway. But I would go upstairs to where he had the vocal booth, and he already had. So Billy Ray Cyrus was going to cut that song 19, and then Miley took off, and then Jeffrey was working on an album with him at the time, and the album ended up not going forward. And he's like, he's not going to cut this song, so I'm just going to put Billy Ray Cyrus, your voice on Billy Ray Cyrus's tracks. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I thought it was a dream. It was. Yeah. And I got in the vocal booth and started singing. And he said, let's just run through it a little, get your voice where we need. Let me get our, the levels put in. And I had no idea what he was talking about when he was saying all this stuff. I'm going to get the levels and all this kind of stuff. I had no idea. And we get to the first chorus and he stops it. And I'm like, oh, man. Because normally, if they stop you, you're not doing great. And he says, man, I won't say the exact words he said, but he said, man, you can actually sing. And it kind of threw me back, and I said, I was like, well, I appreciate the compliment. He said, I thought I was just doing a favor for a veteran and a Gold Star family member, but you can actually sing. So we ended up cutting 19 as a demo. We didn't get it mastered and all that stuff because I really didn't have the avenue or the means to get it out to radio or release it or anything like that. I had no idea what I was doing at that point. I was still just playing in the club scene and trying to make it and whatnot, and you want to talk about getting thrown into the fire on your first experience of doing that and working, not just coming in and working at a small studio with folks that aren't super famous. I mean, he was one of the biggest songwriters in town at the time.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was insane to be in the room with him, but he was just so. Like, he didn't treat me as if I was just some new dude. Like, he legitimately treated me like we had known each other for years. Such a great guy. And when that experience happened, when I got to see that there are people like him in Nashville, all the stories that everybody talks about in Nashville, because there are a lot of snakes in Nashville, sure, and a lot of people that take advantage of you. Like, he legitimately did not charge me to be in the room with him. He acted as if I was no different than anybody else. And, oh, by the way, I had to pull the vocal mic down because he had just got done doing Montgomery Gentry's album. And Troy had been singing, and he's like 8 feet tall.
He's a big guy.
And he had just gotten singing on that microphone. So I'm singing on the microphone that Troy Gentry was just singing on. I'm like, I could not believe that I was in that situation. And Jeffrey, he was just so gracious and so kind and a door opener, because obviously the moment that you start saying in this town that you're working with somebody of his caliber and notoriety, I'm going to digress to a story. So I went to a networking event at the George Jones Ranch, which is called the George Jones University. And essentially it was spend money to hand your business card out and get, networking and whatnot. But they brought a bunch of folks up to speak, and one of them was Wayne Halper. I don't know if you ever heard of him. And he said he was the CEO of Capitol Records when Garth Brooks took off. And he was he's now an entertainment attorney. Or at that time he was. I don't know if he's still alive or not. Because anyway, he gets up on stage and he said, he gave a couple pieces of advice to me that really stuck with me. And this is what's going to bring it back to the Jeffrey Steele story. He said, there are 1,000 people that come to Nashville a day with a guitar and a dream. And there are 1,000 people a day that leave Nashville with an empty guitar case to get back home because they did not learn about the music business. It's not the music passion. It's not I love the music, or I want to perform business. No, it is the music business. And he said, if you cannot figure out how to sell how to sell yourself as an artist and sell records and put meat in seats, you'll fail in this town. And those are the only things that the record labels care about, because they're here to make money.
Right.
They're not just here to put out great music. They're here to make money. Otherwise, they're a business, and that's why they call it music business. And the other thing that he said, there are two things that will make you successful in this town. And he said, believe it or not, talent is not one of them, because we can make you sound like anything.
Right.
He said, you got people that can't necessarily sing, but they sound amazing on the radio because you can tune their voices and whatnot. He said, who you know and how much money you have. That's what's going to make you successful in this town. And I held on to that. And I got to see it firsthand when I started working with Jeffrey Steele, because I knew Jeffrey Steele and was working with him, and all of a sudden everybody was wondering about who was this new kid that Jeffrey Steele was working with. And all of a sudden doors started opening, and record labels wanted to talk to me, and management wanted to talk to me, and all that stuff. But I hadn't, my fan base, we still had Reverb Nation and what was the MySpace. We still had those as our, primary outlets, and really had not, didn't understand the whole. I understood the marketing in a local market and a regional market, like how to market myself and all that kind of stuff. But the social media started really kicking in, and then all of a sudden you could buy likes and you could buy friends and all that stuff, and that, that was real hot for a second, and then all of a sudden everybody was getting blacklisted for it. So that's when all that was going down. So I really didn't know a whole lot about how I could, when I got into these record labels, what to say. And essentially, I wasn't developed enough at that time. And looking back on where I was then and now, and the amount of knowledge that has come, that's why they call this that 10-year town. Like I said, you got it's almost like you need that 10 years of knowledge and development of relationships to understand what this business is really about, right, how it goes down, and what you need to do to find success. So that was a long answer to your what was it like to work with Jeffrey Steele, but that was the catalyst to everything really taking off, for me, and me deciding that, this isn't just a flash in the pan. This is something I really want to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, relationships are a huge part, and I think there's probably a fair amount of opportunities to be able to sit down with, hit songwriters or country artists, whatever, with the veteran thing.
Absolutely.
But then to be able to have the talent to showcase yourself, and then be able to kind of establish some of those relationships. And then I think one thing that kind of comes hand in hand with being a veteran is the stick-to-itiveness.
Oh yeah.
The persistence, the drive, the
discipline to show up on time.
The discipline to show up on time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that's definitely everybody asks me how's the in interviews that aren't military talking to military, what has the military done for you as far as your music business is concerned? And you talk about the discipline to show up on time, the discipline to do the right work, the discipline to put in the work. Those things are just intrinsic values that we get and have, that and character traits that you hear so much about other artists that had the potential of making it and don't make it because they lack those just basic character traits that you and I find normal.
Yeah, or obsessive.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of stuff going around the internet about the anxiety that comes with timelines and being late and things like that. And I mean, it's a real thing for me. If I'm running late, man, it drives me crazy.
That's one of the biggest things. And Dolly Parton's always said, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late. She's like, this town, and I watched an interview that she did, and she said, I don't understand what happened in this town. All of a sudden, nobody cares about showing up on time. Yeah. It's like, you're wasting people's time. You're wasting people's energy. What does that mean? It means you think that their time isn't as valuable as yours. Yeah. And that's a disrespect that, should get you kicked out of Nashville. Yeah. But it's normal. It had been
intrinsically instilled in us.
It is.
Be on time, be early, be prepared, all that stuff, which is... I think it lends itself well to veterans that come to town or work with people and that kind of thing. And, you just got to have that work ethic and that ability to just keep attacking.
We were always taught to think outside the box and get the mission accomplished. And one of the, the biggest thing in Nashville is the no. The number of no's that you're going to get, and the people that don't want to give you the time of day and those kind of things, or overcoming the obstacles of funding, or overcoming the obstacles of having a band member that you need to fire and find somebody else, all those things. But overcoming those obstacles, it happens. You say, okay, well, I'm used to this. We're used to going around. I always said that I like to turn roadblocks and the speed bumps and blow out my suspension going over those speed bumps as fast as I possibly can. And either I'm going to go around that obstacle or through it, regardless. But once again, that's another thing that we have, a character trait that we have from the number of years that we spent in. It's just ingrained in us.
Yeah, and I think also, you having been on deployment, being a Gold Star family member twice, sometimes the things that may devastate other people are like, okay, they said no, or okay, well, that didn't work out. It's not the end of the world. Been through worse.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, another piece of advice I got, and I don't remember who gave it to me, but they said that the music industry is a bunch of highs and lows, and the higher you get, the lower you're going to get. The key to it all is trying to find out that even keel, to try and find that happy medium where you can be excited about your accomplishments and be like, I can't believe this is happening, and enjoy, the incredible experiences that you're going to get. But you also have to be able to temper that and temper those emotions when it comes to, because we were talking about it earlier. I mean, when COVID happened with me, losing 15 shows and 4 speaking engagements overnight, it was, what am I going to do? But then I realized that all my brands, the patch operations out there with Tim, I had to give him the shout out now with Grit Gear Apparel, but I was with Grunt Style at the time and Nine Line after. But all the brands that I'd created would put my name on. Fortunately, my demographic is law enforcement, first responders, and military. And what were they doing? They were essential workers, still getting paid, but a lot of them didn't have to go to work because they were stuck in their houses. So what were they doing? Spending their paychecks online on my merchandise. So my merchandise sales went up, 4 times that. So you think about, and I just started really pushing my merchandise and brands online, and it helped me pay my bills because, military retirement check is great. A disability obviously helps in that regard as well, but I didn't have my disability at the time, and I'm still paying bills with a military retirement check. That's why there's so many of us veterans that get jobs after our retirement, because your pay gets cut in a third, and you have to learn to live off a completely different budget and find different things to do. But it's also hard to just sit there and do nothing. So finding other jobs. But obviously, I had an entire career that I just started. I'd already been going for a few years, and finding that happy medium when I didn't have shows, when I love, like, that's the best, obviously the best part of it. It's only 3% of it. 3% of the music business for an artist, but it's the best part of it, and it's what keeps you going or keeps you rolling. That was gone. So how do you not fall into the doldrums and say, "Oh man"? Well, like I said, finding that even keel was, and that was a challenge. It's obviously, especially if you don't know everything, don't know what you don't know in that regard. So yeah.
So regarding your career and different opportunities, how did the PBR thing happen for you?
That was actually, not to make the story too long, because there was all that stuff that happened with Charlie Daniels before all that. So we came out with Crank It, my first music video, and that was the first song that I'd actually ever written in town. And wrote that song, and it made it onto the Nashville network. We did an independent, and it actually was playing in the the in between the number 1 and number 2 songs on their nightly countdown, and then they had a follow-up countdown that they had rigged it to where I was playing me, Taylor Swift, me, Taylor Swift, me. So every time Red played, my video was playing. So that really got me a little bit of, people were starting to notice that. Of course, obviously the Jeffrey Steele thing was helping as well, that I finally had moved to town. And then I wrote with Dylan Dixon, and his son was the kid in the Crank It music video.
Yeah.
Wrote with him, and his wife at the time was Paige was managing the Palm. And of course, as you just got to perform at the Journey Home Project's annual gala,
Patriot Awards.
Yeah, they're it was a little bit different then. It was kind of more just a fundraising gala that they were having at the Palm, and Paige was like, "Hey, I want to introduce you to David Corlew and the board of the Journey Home Project." So I went and met with them, and I couldn't believe I was sitting there with Charlie Daniels' manager, and David was just as nice could be. And we did that event. I got invited to do that event. And when I did that event, David said, let's have breakfast, in the next week. So we sat down for breakfast. And he said, Ryan, let me ask you a question. Because Crank It was out and all that. And he said, why aren't you telling your story? Why are you? And I said, well, because Jason Aldean was out with Hicktown and all that kind of stuff. And that rock and edge country is what I really like to perform live and whatnot. And I said, well, I didn't want to get pigeonholed as a veteran artist. And that's the only thing that I could do was patriotic music. I wanted to look at the mainstream side of it. I wanted to go mainstream, and that's why we did Crank It. And he said, Ryan, if there's anything that country music fans is they can the way a country music fan is, the way they think is they could see through something that is not genuine. Now, he said, I don't think that that's not genuine because you wrote the song genuinely, and the song really is about the kind of woman that I was attracted to.
Yeah. Fantastic video, by the way.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That is hilarious.
I appreciate it. But he said, you got to really start telling your story. And then he said, we got the volunteer jam that's coming up. We'd really like for you to perform at that volunteer jam. And that was 2014. And I was just blown away, which was volunteer jam since 1969 with the original Leonard Skinner. I mean, massive artists come and play this thing. And I'm starting to see the lineup of artists that are getting booked. Ted Nugent, Michael W. Smith, Leonard Skinner, I mean, Trace Adkins, Wynonna Judd. I mean, all these names are just like huge. And then Sean Hannity's gonna, host it, and then we got Stormy Warren. It's gonna host it with him, and I couldn't believe that I was gonna be part of the lineup. Well, then I said, he had the Christmas for Kids. Charlie used to do Christmas for Kids at Ryman. And I got invited to do the Christmas for Kids bus thing where they essentially put a bunch of tour buses out of artists, and they say, hey, Ryan, we're going to give you a tour bus to sit on and sign autographs for, all the kids that come through and whatnot. And it's a great organization that helps underprivileged kids here in Nashville. But so I did that, and then I found out he was doing a Christmas for Kids at the Ryman. It was two different events. And one of the things they always say in this town, it's always a no if you don't ask.
That's right.
You can ask too much and it becomes a no, but it's always going to be a no if you never do ask.
Right.
And I just texted David and I said, David, is there an opening slot for this Christmas for Kids? And he said, sure. So in 2014, I went from having a music video and never had performed in any major venue to performing on the Ryman Auditorium stage, Mother Church of Country Music. Mm-hmm. And that was the only time that I've ever walked out onto a stage and cried during sound check. I could not believe I was standing there. They put me in the Johnny Cash dressing room. And it was so surreal. And then knowing that there was still something huge on the horizon with Charlie. And Charlie was gosh, man, what just a kind, genuine. His hugs were like your grandpa's hugs. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a big hugger. And he spoke so highly of me. Like, he would publicly talk about me. And I could not believe I had an icon of country music doing this. It was another one of those experiences. And so we ended up doing the volunteer jam, and I played between Ted Nugent and Michael W. Smith. So Ted Nugent gets up there, and I know you didn't ask me about this story, but this whole progression of getting into it, Ted Nugent gets up there, and he was the only artist that was playing with his own band. We were playing with Six Wire, which a lot of folks don't know Six Wire, but they're usually, they were and I think they still are, like one of the best group of musicians in town. They're all studio level A guys there, but they were the backing band for every artist except for Ted Nugent. He said he had to have his own band, which I'm fine with, whatever. That ended up turning out to be a great thing, because he said, Ryan, you got about a minute to tell your story, which Aaron and Randy had both passed at that point. And I got to tell a story about my two brothers, which takes, it takes time. And then I got to sing a song, and a song was What You Think of Me, which we released with a video as well. And it was an unheard song. It was my own song, an original. I wasn't going to do a cover out there. And I got to, so anyway, Sean Hannity's voice was going, so he was supposed to introduce Stormy Warren, who was supposed to introduce me. And Stormy's up there talking, and I was like, I didn't hear Sean, so I wonder if they did it backwards. Anyways, I think that's how it went. But Stormy's up there, and he said, hey, Ted Nugent, they get off stage, all their dudes unplug and turn off the amps, unplug all their stuff, and they get off stage, and Stormy Warren, and so as soon as they get off stage, Six Wire gets up there, and they're like, everything's off. We're like, and then we got to turn it up. We got to do all this stuff, and some of our tube amps got to get warmed back up, all that. And anyway, so he said, former UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter pilot, 2-time Gold Star family member, Ryan Weaver, and brings me up on stage. And when I was walking up, David Corlew said, you need to extend your story and tell more of your story, because the guys need to give you their cue when they're ready and tuned and everything's good to go. So because Ted Nugent's people unplugged all that stuff, I got to spend more time telling that story. And it was to a sold-out Bridgestone Arena here in Nashville. Nobody knew who I was. Had these two Marines come up to the front of the stage during the song. I sang What You Think of Me, which is a song about my brother, Aaron. And I got a standing ovation from I got a standing ovation to a sold-out arena because of Charlie Daniels and Ted Nugent. Thank goodness.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks, Ted, for. I mean, I've been a fan of his forever, but my wife was sitting there videoing from the 4th or 5th row back, and she said all of his amps were blowing their hair back. Like the sound, it was like so you could feel the energy from it. And then I get on and I sing a ballad right after Ted Nugent. Then Michael W. Smith, been a huge fan of Michael W. Smith forever, and I couldn't believe I was meeting Michael W. Smith. And then Travis Tritt was there the next year, because I did next year's. But anyway, so we got done doing that. And by the way, folks out there who are watching this on video, I'm not afraid to cry. I don't care. Anybody that's ever seen my show, I talk about my brother. I made a promise to do that on every stage, and I cry. The reality behind being a dude doesn't mean you have to hide all that stuff, and I don't care what anybody thinks about me if I do. Anyway, it's me. But so we got done doing that show, and I did well enough, and then once again, September 11th is coming up, and I'm like, I didn't know if Charlie was playing, where he was playing or whatever, and I just messaged Dave, and I said, hopefully, this was several days after, I said, still on that high of this massive thing happening, and I said, asked David, I said, I know that Charlie plays the Opry a lot, would it be possible to get on, play on the Opry stage? And David said, just so happens he's playing September 11th, and he's going to host your section of the show. And it was the second time he had ever hosted. And Charlie Daniels introduced me onto that Grand Ole Opry stage.
Wow.
And, so I think one of the coolest things about that moment was when I first came into town, I went from being an officer in the Army down to a third of the paycheck, going to college full-time at 39, a bar backing at the Wild Horse Saloon, and being a personal trainer. So I had the three income makers to try and make up for it. And when the Wild Horse Saloon was owned by Opryland at the time, and now it's owned by Marriott, I believe. Now it's Category 5.
Category 10?
Category 10, yeah. Luke Combs' place, but it was the Wild Horse. Anyway, they did an orientation at the Opryland, and one of the places they took you to was the Opry, or the Opry House. And a lot of folks don't know out there that the Opry is not a place, or the Opry show is not a place. The Grand Ole Opry, it's actually a show. The place used to be the Ryman Auditorium, and then they took that center circle of stage and they put it in the Opry House that's now outside of town. But Opryland owned the Wild Horse, so we're doing the tour. And now, of course, 3/4 of the people that are doing this are all bartenders and servers and all that. Of course, what are we here for? Music. Everybody's here for music. So they say, Ryan, hey, we're on the stage. This is the iconic Grand Ole Opry show. This is where it all happens, on the Opry stage. And say, Ryan, we know you're an artist, along with other ones. Get in that center circle and sing. And this is when I first moved to town, and I said, I'm not going to stand in the middle of that circle until I earn it or I'm invited. And then I got invited by Charlie Daniels, of all people, to do it. I mean, that kind of a story, once again, it's just one of those things that I could say that, what would you say, something meets opportunity, luck meets opportunity, but one of the things, if I sucked, it also gives you the confidence when someone starts believing in you like that. If I sucked, they wouldn't have invited me to do those things. They're not going to put somebody up on those kind of stages, especially at the Opry, which is a pinnacle performance in your career. So it really gave me the drive. I had both my brothers in my corner, fueling that fire, and in having somebody like Charlie Daniels and traveling those circles, believing in you and providing those opportunities for you. Really was a great shot in the arm, and that's where Burn came from. So, yeah, I got to perform with Charlie again the next year at the on stage with him as well. So that was at Bridgestone. So that was.
I wanted to talk about Burn real quick, and Heal the Heroes, and then your new song coming out with Craig Campbell.
Yeah.
So to walk us through Burn, I saw the video. It's fantastic. The Benghazi guys were there. Tig, Tonto, Oz. How'd that come about?
So 13 Hours was going to be coming out the next year. I believe it came out in 15. I think that's when it was. It was 15. Was it? No, 16. It was coming out the next year, but they were promoting it at the Volunteer Jam. And it was only Tig and Oz on that one in particular. And once again, because Charlie and David Corlew believing in me and allowing me to do this, I would not have met those guys. Everything is an opportunity in that, in this town, and if you take it. But they were promoting the film, and I was standing backstage talking to John and Oz. And Oz, I already had Burn written, but it was not written specifically for the movie. It was more of a generic military song, and it can still be that if you think about it. But we changed. I talked to Oz about it, and I said, "Hey, are they doing the score for the movie? Have they done it yet?" And he said, "Well, it is being edited right now. I know it was in post." And he said, "But I don't know if they've done a score or not." So he said, "But John's a bit more close to that. But you probably want to change the lyrics a little bit on that to make it more specific to what happened." So we changed a couple of the lyrics, minor changes, but it really made a big difference. And then I got in touch with John, and John actually got in touch with the legal department at Paramount and was talking and said, "Hey, we've got this song. He's going to do a music. We're trying to get a music video put together. Can he use parts of the scenes from the movie?" And they viewed it as a marketing opportunity, so they gave me the trailer clips for the music video. And John and I really struck up a friendship. And once again, somebody believing in me and giving me an opportunity that he didn't have to. He auctioned off a custom AK-47 that got the music video baseline funded. And we knew we were going to need a bit more money than that, especially for the marketing side of it. And he got Chris involved, and that's where Chris Tonto got involved. And when Chris got involved, the funding, because he was the more famous of all three of them at the time, because of the Jumbo. If you haven't watched 13 Hours Secret Soldier Benghazi, you got to watch it, and then you'll see the real guy who's the guy, I can't remember his name. He depicted him in 13 Hours. Anyway, he's been in a lot of other stuff. So Chris got involved, and the funding skyrocketed. And then we locked in, filmed the music video, all law enforcement, first responder, military family cast. That included all the extras that were on it, which was killer. The only people that weren't that were my band. But so it was cool to have that to be able to put in there. And lots of folks came on board. Cryptech came on board. There were a lot of product placement sponsorships. Barrett came out and let me fire their 50 cal and one of their automatics to put in there. And I mean, we had so many different companies that came in to support that project. And once again, had Chris and John and Chris not really gotten involved, had Oz not, had me change the lyrics a little bit, whatever, had John not gone to Paramount, none of that video would have happened. No man's an island, and I'm going to tell you, if there's, my career is not a true testament to that. So video comes out. we had a great release on the Plaza and Bridgestone Arena there at the Plaza. And I got asked to come do a nonprofit veterans event out in Colorado, opening for, the first year I was opening for Lou Graham and several other ones, but the second year I got invited back again and opening for Doc and Warren, Jack Russell's Great White. And the only country music artist on the bill, but also the only veteran on the bill. And I told you a little bit about that story, trying to make it a little bit short so we don't go here forever. But I'm on stage, and Dawkins' manager comes on stage. And this is a veteran nonprofit event. Mark Geist, Oz, had driven out. He was going to come on stage and sing. We're going to raise money, do a live auction on stage, all that stuff. And Dawkins' manager came on stage, and you guys are done. Get off stage. Dawkins will not start late. So, to all the folks out there, I don't cuss. I don't drop F-bombs on stage. And I figured it was a biker rally, veterans event at a bar, opening for 80s rock bands, that I was pretty safe. And I got on front of stage, and I told them what I felt. And that I didn't care whether I was the opening act to 3 much bigger bands than me. I didn't care about the headliner because I was there for my brothers and sisters in arms. And so just so happens as the CEO of the PBR was in the front row, and they were the sponsors. And he loved my background and my story. He loved the performance, the show. Came up to me and gave me his card afterwards, and I had no idea who he was. He said, I work with the PBR. We'd love to bring you on board. And now it's 2016. So Win Varble was very good friends with Sean Gleason, and we co-wrote one of the songs on the Celebrate America EP, but Win Varble produced the Celebrate America EP. We got that done in 2016, going to 17. And Steven Tyler being the headliner at the World Finals in Las Vegas at T-Mobile Arena for the PBR was in 16, and they had some dude who nobody knew named Ryan Weaver headlining in 2017 there, and signed on for 28 arena shows with them and a quasi-record deal. My first show in 18 was Madison Square Garden. So AT&T Stadium, y'all can look up the video out there in front of the biggest crowd that PBR had a record crowd up to that time of 41,000 people at AT&T Stadium, and it was surreal. It was incredible. So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Saw the video, been listening on iTunes. There's a lot of folks in that video.
Let's talk about heroes. Yeah, that one's a Don Jenkins. I met, Medal of Honor recipient. Part of Forrest Gump's character was after what Don Jenkins actually did in Vietnam. Jessica Lynch is in there. Diana Muller, great friend of mine, Second Amendment advocate, but as a big women's gun rights advocate, and she's spoken in front of Congress. Great friend of mine, world champion 3-gun shooter. Who else we got? One of my best friends, Heath Smith, but Rudy, who's a tunnel rat in Vietnam, and just it was an incredible experience. It was the first music video that I shot down in Georgia, all in Claxton, Evans, and Tatnall counties down in Georgia. But an inspirational video. It really talks about our heroes. And essentially at that time, when Let's Talk About Heroes came out, I'm sure that a lot of folks, the political climate really had shifted to where law enforcement was being demonized. Our heroes, folks weren't talking about our military service members and the sacrifices that they made. It just was to me as a veteran, and my dad was a cop, my brother-in-law was a cop, my uncle was a cop. I've got a whole family of military service and military and law enforcement service. Yeah. To me, it was personal. So I said, I think we need to talk about what heroes are doing and not stop talking about it. It really needs to be something that that folks are still focusing on, the great things and the sacrifices they're doing. So it was a cool video to get done for sure.
Yeah. The operating room scene kind of had my eyeballs sweating a little bit.
Yeah, I had the concept for that video. I worked with Chris Martini, Max Martini. Everybody knows Max Martini played Oz in 13 Hours, but his brother Chris Martini co-directed that with me. Essentially, he was the primary director. But I had a lot of the scenes in my head, like what I wanted to have happen, and that operating scene in particular for Diana, I was like, there's a scene that you might not have seen, but they say that children their innocence, they can see see angels.
Yep.
And so there's that scene where he's the only one that sees Don Jenkins walking down the hall. And Don Jenkins is actually playing a World War II grandfather in this as a character. And Diana Muller is playing a law enforcement officer that saves a child in a from a burning house. And anyway, and is unconscious. She's in there. So anyway, y'all can check out the rest of it. But him coming in there and then us just making him disappear to really, because a lot of folks don't get that that's what it is until that happens. You don't realize that he's actually there and he brings her back to life. And I mean, it was, yeah. And Diana's acting in that. She's never acted before, but her acting in that was spectacular and very genuine. Not just in that scene, but the final scene of the whole thing. Very genuine, very, very real. And one of the things about all of my music videos, I've always had friends and family. I've always had, folks that I've gotten to know over the years. And I was connected with Diana Muller because of Burn, because of Chris and John. I mean, and then she ends up in my music video. And nice. She and Ryan, her husband, and I have been great friends since.
Yeah, you continue to do that, bring in friends, family. And I saw recently that you did that down here, just down the road. Mm-hmm. Craig Campbell's got a place, Grindstone Cowboy, fantastic place. He's got one here in Shelbyville too, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. Fortunate to be able to play at both. He's come by the studio, but I noticed that you were putting that out there. Hey friends, hey family, let's, if you want to come be a part of this, we want you to, to be a part of it. And so what's on the horizon? What's that song, what's that project?
We're actually releasing the song under neo-traditional because of things like Zach Top and Cody Johnson. Mm-hmm. I love that kind of music just the same. I love it as much as I love 80s rock music, but I mean, it's got that ode to the 90s kind of feel to it, which from the 90s country. I listen to Travis Tritt's greatest hits as on replay through my entire flight school before I even became a country music artist. He's my favorite artist of all time. But that neo-traditional sound, it's a more traditional song. I actually co-wrote it with Craig. I wrote it in his living room, and that was a cool thing too. I don't know how I got connected with him. I can't remember how I got connected with him, but I just asked him, like, hey, you want to write? And this guy, I mean, he was a top 40 artist, and he's got amazing songs, and he just said, sure, come on, let's do it.
Yeah.
He gave me an opportunity to sit down and write with him, and I love all my songs. I really do. Some I don't necessarily like as much as others but I've co-written almost every song that I've recorded. The initial days, obviously not, just cutting other people's songs like Jeffrey Steele and those kind of things, but pretty much anything that I put out with a music video to it, I've co-written a song. And everyone who has heard this song has said that they think it's the best one that they've ever heard. And these are people that have listened to me and have been fans of mine for quite some time. And it is a completely different path from what I've been taking along the way. The Jason Aldean rock and edgy stuff, the 80s rock infused with country, because I grew up listening to 80s rock. That's why I fit so well in with those 80s rock bands, because some of our stuff is pretty hard. Yeah. This one is not that. It's a traditional sounding song, and it's about going back to when we were kids and when kids didn't look at each other differently, when we all stood together as one, when the red, white, and blue wasn't ever put last, all those things that mattered the most, when patriotism wasn't a political conversation, when you could love this country and it had nothing to do with politics. And for me, that it was important that this music video told that kind of a story, but also had an ode to some of the things that we loved growing up in the 80s, like watching Red Dawn and the Wolverines in Red Dawn. So we cast 5 kids, not kids because they're old enough to be my kids, but 5 kids in this. A girl that works with my wife, Jillian, she had 2 great-looking sons, and they had a friend. And then but when I posted it on Instagram, there was a mom whose daughter, Caitlin Croker, is here in town. She's a phenomenal vocalist. I'm telling you, she needs to come out to this. She's working with Operation, there's so many veteran nonprofits. Is it not Operation Song? Anyway, I think that may be. But anyway, she's an immense patriot, great Christian girl, incredible vocalist. And but her mom reached out and said, "Hey, I've got my daughter here. Is this okay?" She sent me a picture, and I said, "Absolutely, we'd love to." And then we had another girl, Aubrey, reach out. I mean, she drove all the way from, I think it was Kentucky or Missouri. She drove all the way like 3.5 hours to be part of it, and she's just was an absolute sweetheart. And we dressed them. And did a few things in there that we, an ode to the original 5 Wolverines. When there were all the Wolverines, but Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen and Jennifer Grey and all them. But so I wanted to have that kind of Easter egg that's in there throughout that story. But got to perform the song obviously with Craig at Grindstone Cowboy, and the community came out for that. My family's in it. My nephew is in it. I'm excited about that. My wife is in it. She actually plays the teacher. She's been in 3 of my music videos. She was actually in Crank It, but you missed her because she was a blip when she was walking out. But she played a principal in What You Think of Me. Anyway, so but the music video is gonna. It's about all the things. And when anybody's listened to the song, they said, you close your eyes and it just takes you right back to when you were younger. It really does. So I think that I think that we did a pretty effective job of creating the imagery for this song. And it's going on pre-sale and pre-save this upcoming week. We're going to start posting about it on my social media and put it on my website. The song will not actually drop until July 2nd, along with the music video, because we want to do it right before 4th of July weekend.
Nice. On
that first Thursday of the month.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're excited. I'm excited about that.
So the song is called?
It's called I Want to Go Back.
I Want to Go Back. Coming out July 2nd.
Yep.
And everybody can find out information about you, Ryan Weaver.
On RyanWeaver.net. Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. So RyanWeaver.net, our partners over at Wreaths Across America Radio, rebroadcast it on Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. So we want to leave a little bit of space to be able to put your song in there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for your service. Thank you for all your sacrifices as a Gold Star family member. And thanks for being here on the VetTunes podcast.
I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak to another brother.
Absolutely. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Sitting on the dock, sun setting on the water, Dad told a story about Grandpa flying through the skies like a rocket, both engines flaming out. Escape from the bottom of a freedom bird falling, the only one to make it home. Till a brother with a bugle played a sad song for him, standing in the rain alone. Let's talk about heroes, about the ones not afraid to fight. Talk about freedom, 'cause someone gave their life. Talk about always standing when others can't, and those who hold the line. Talk about heroes and their loved ones left behind. A young girl walked over and handed me a badge. I knelt down to ask her why. Said my father was an officer caught in the crossfire, saving another life. I still remember a dark day in December when we cried to his last call. And Amazing Grace when the bagpipes played for my daddy who gave it all. Let's talk about heroes, about the ones not afraid to fight. Talk about freedom, 'cause someone gave their life. Talk about always standing when others can't, and those who hold the line. Talk about heroes and the loved ones left behind. They gave their lives for you and I. They paid the price. Yeah, they sacrificed. Let's talk about heroes, about the ones not afraid to fight. Talk about freedom, 'cause someone gave their life. Let's talk about heroes, the one's not afraid to fight.